Wishing all of you with a bright future. I am beginning the Neet MDS Anatomy series with osteology. The skull of an adult consists of 22 bones and it can be broadly classified into your calvaria or your brain case, which consists of 8 bones, and your facial skeleton, which consists of 14 bones. Now, it is important for us to know the paired and unpaired among these. So, taking into consideration your calvaria, there are 2 paired bones, that is your parietal and your temporal bone, and 4 unpaired bones. Now, to make it easier for you guys to remember it, we have made a mnemonic, that is physician trainee named Sophie. Physician, P for paired, physician for parietal, trainee for temporal, and her name is Sophie. S for sphenoid, O for occipital, F for frontal, and E for ethmoid. Here in the picture, as you can see, physician trainee, P for your parietal, T for your temporal, and SOFE, Sophie, that is S for sphenoid, O for occipital, F for frontal, and E for ethmoid. It is really important to know the picture because you should also know the adjacent bones. For example, in case of parietal bone, the adjacent bones are your frontal, sphenoid, temporal, and occipital. It is very important in Neet MDS perspective to know the position of each and every bones. Next, coming to the facial skeleton, here there are 2 unpaired bones on the contrary to your calvaria, and it is pretty easy to remember. Those are your mandible and vomer. Now, in order to remember the paired bone, we are continuing with the mnemonic. Physician trainee named Sophie, she made a Z-like pin, P-I-N. A Z-like or Z-like pin, P-I-N. Made for maxilla, Z for zygomatic, like for lacrimal, P for palatine, I for inferior nasal concha, and N for nasal. Again, physician trainee named Sophie, she made a Z-like pin. As we know, there are 2 unpaired bones, that is your vomer and your mandible, and coming to the paired ones, made for maxilla, Z for zygomatic, like for lacrimal. Here you can see your lacrimal. This is your maxilla, and the green color goes for your zygomatic. Now pin, P for palatine. Here you can see small red color structure, that is your palatine. Inferior nasal concha in the green color, and N for your nasal. Hope it is easy for you to remember. Now, coming back to this figure, you can see the bones, they are separated by immovable joints in the skull, and these immovable joints are called your sutures. First is your coronal suture, which separates your frontal bone with your 2 parietal bones, that is your coronal suture. Then comes your sagittal suture, which is dividing your 2 parietal lobes. And the third is your lambdoid suture, present between the occipital and the 2 parietal bones. Now, yet another important suture is your metopic suture. Metopic suture, it separates the 2 halves of the frontal bone. 2 halves of the frontal bone, but it is present only in 3 to 8% of individuals. This is important in your Neet MDS perspective. Next, coming to your parieto-mastoid and occipito-mastoid suture. Your parieto-mastoid suture, it separates the mastoid process or mastoid part of the temporal bone with your parietal bone. And again, occipito-mastoid separates the mastoid portion of the temporal bone from the occipital bone. So these are really important, all these sutures, its position. Now there are some points which you must remember. Bregma's van landed in pure ash. This is just to remember the order from front to back. Considering the top of your skull, I am talking about the order from front to back. So starting with bregma. Bregma, it is the meeting point between your coronal and sagittal sutures. That is your bregma. Bregma comes first. After that, van for vertex. Vertex is the highest point in your sagittal suture, the highest point. So first comes bregma, meeting point between your coronal and sagittal suture. Then come vertex, highest point on the sagittal suture, and later on we come down to lambda. If you know the position of lambdoid suture, it's pretty easy. This is the meeting point between the sagittal and the lambdoid suture. Now, bregma's van, bregma for bregma only, van for vertex, landed for lambda in pure ash. Pure ash, again, you should. Pterion is an area in your temporal fossa where four bones, that is your frontal, this part is your frontal bone, then your parietal, your temporal, and your sphenoid bone meet. This part is called your pterion, H-shaped suture. It's a H-shaped suture. You should remember this. Next point is your asterion. Asterion is the meeting point of your parietomastoid, occipitomastoid, and lambdoid suture. Asterion, joining of the parietomastoid, occipitomastoid, and the lambdoid suture. Thanks for watching and do subscribe to our channel.